I believe you've learned a lot from Module 1, and today we'll be talking about the design principles and theories. What are design principles? Design principles and theories serve as guidelines for creative, effective, and aesthetically pleasing designs. So what we'll be talking about today are things that you should know when you want to create designs that are pleasing for users. And the primary goal of this principle is to enhance usability, functionality, and the overall experience of your product. So if you want your product to be usable, if you want it to function well, then you need to abide by the design principle. And this principle applies to all products, be it a website or a mobile app. Now let's move on to the basic fundamentals of UI UX design. Now, these basic fundamentals are very important to follow, and they are like guidelines that help you create visually appealing design. And one of them is colors. Your color choice plays a vital role in setting up mood for people. Now, understanding how color works helps you create better design. Most times when you look at fintech applications on your phone, you discover that they use a wide variety of blue. And that is because when it comes to finance, blue is the dominant color. For health, it's a shade of green. For agriculture, it is green. And for kids, it's a shade of happy colors like pink and the likes. Now, when it comes to buttons, it is also very important to put colors in mind because colors can shape how a user sees a button. Of course, when you see something that is successful, green always means successful. For buttons like cancel or delete, it is preferable to use red because it means you're performing an action that might never be gotten back and is dangerous. And then for warning signs, you could use yellow or a dark tone of orange. The next thing we want to look at is hierarchy. So what is hierarchy? Hierarchy is just placing the most important before the other. So looking at my screen, you could see that by default, you're going to read the big text first. And this is because by design, whatever is bigger seems to be the focus. So hierarchy is used to make user focus on a particular content. So when you want your user to focus on a particular thing, you put up the principle of hierarchy before another. And also that is why on homepage of websites, the hero section, which is the first section you see, the text is always bigger. The next thing you want to look at is contrast. Contrast talks about how you play with colors. It is not the same as colors. It is just how you play with colors for readability, legibility, and accessibility. If you use a color that is too bright, it means the user that has an eye problem might not be able to use your product. In that case, you are not practicing accessibility because you did not consider users that has visual issues. So it's best to use colors that fits all users. And then emphasis. Emphasis talks about making your user focus on a particular thing without them losing focus of other things. So emphasis can be applied in terms of colors, in terms of fonts, position, shape, or style. You could have different boxes and then decide to make one of the box a different color from the rest. It means the user is going to focus on that colored box because you want the user to focus on it. And the last is typography. Looking at my screen, I wrote, "I will always find you." But because I'm using two different fonts, the tone actually passes a message. The first one passes a message like a love message, while the other one sounds like a threat because of the kinds of fonts I use. So when you're designing a product, it is best to use the proper font that conveys the message you're trying to pass across. Font choice matters when passing a message. Let's move on to the next slide. Now we're going to talk about the principle of user-centered design. There are principles you should put in mind when you want to build a product. Remember, we said in Model 1 that every product you build should be user-centered. You should have the user in mind. Number 1 is user research. We are going to talk extensively on user research in our next module. But briefly, what is user research? This involves conducting research to gain a deep understanding of your target users. User research helps you as a designer to make decisions based on your user needs and expectation. When you want to design a product for a user, it is best to understand the needs of these users and also understand their expectation with respect to your product. Because when you design without the user in mind, it becomes difficult for them to use. The next one is usability. Create designs that are easy and efficient to use. Like we said in our Model 1, don't cluster your design. Always test with your users. Make sure what you've designed actually fits what they want and make sure they can use it properly. The next one I want to talk about is accessibility, which is very important. When you're designing a product for users, always consider people that have disabilities, visual disabilities, movement disabilities, or mental impairedness, because they are also your users. Some accessibility guidelines are followed to ensure that these people are not left out. And those accessibility guidelines include easy to operate, understandable, and also perceivable. These people with disability should be able to use your product without having problems. For example, if you have an image, it is best to have an alternative text close to that image. Why? Because most people cannot see images properly, but they can read text properly. So the text gives them an idea of what the image is about. The next one is iteration. Iteration talks about improvement and refinement of your design. So by using your user feedback at each stage, you can address usability issue. So do not ignore feedback from your users. When your user give you feedbacks, always use that feedback to make your product better. Now we are going to move on to what we call the Gestalt principle. Now, what is Gestalt principle when it comes to design? It is a psychological theory that explains how humans perceive and interpret visual information. So most people look at visual designs and they interpret it in various ways. And we are going to look at 3 ways that we can actually make our design better using the Gestalt principle. The first one is proximity principle. And how proximity principle works is quite simple. It tells the user that when an object is close to each other, they are seen as a group. Take an example from my screen. The left image shows that all shapes are the same, but the 2 by the right are closer to each other than the one on the left. It tells the user that the 2 on the right are a group of elements. The second thing there are the same shape but different colors. But the one on the left are close. And that tells the user that that is a group of elements and is different from the one on the right. The third one is different shape and different colors. But the down parts are closer and it tells the user that those close ones are a group of an element and they are quite different from the top ones. Now looking at the image on the right, how do we apply this to UI UX design? The first image there are clustered. There is no space, no proximity. It shows that that is all an object. And you don't want to do that in your design because you're trying to show the user that these are different objects. So you have to give them space. The second principle we want to look at is the rule of similarities. Now, elements that have similar visual appearance seems to be more related or grouped than the ones not sharing the same attributes. If you look at the image on my left, you notice that elements with the same colors are seen as a group. Elements with the same shape are seen as a group. Now, how does this apply? When you're performing different actions and you make your design the same color, your user sees it as the same action. But when you want to perform different action, it is best to use different colors so that your user perceives these are different actions. Which brings us to the third principle, the principle of continuation. When the eye is guided to move from one object to another, we speak about the law of continuity. The law of continuity helps the user to be able to see curved objects or objects in a straight line as one object. How does this apply? When designing things like tabs for a product, it is best not to give them space, because by the time you give them space, it tells the user that you're designing a different thing that is not included. But when they are together, it tells the user that it's a progressive, continued action. I hope you've learned a lot from this. And if there's anything you don't understand, you might want to go through it again and also read your resources that have been attached to this video. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next module.